Time to talk Rebels here at the Voice of College Football. We got Jake Evans on the line from the Rebel Walk. It's always a good discussion. Let's go down to Lane Kiffin's country there in Oxford to talk up a bowl champion over a top 10 or 15 Indiana team. Jake, how you doing today?
Good day, Mark. Good day. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you. I know that you've got a little bit of basketball and baseball to cover as well, but we're going to track you down for some football and look forward to the spring practice, which has yet to be announced. But we know, as you mentioned to me a few minutes ago, that the Grove Bowl is coming up the last week of April. And again, Jake, we give you kudos here because you are the one and only that doesn't have a mini helmet. Ole Miss is the only one that reps the full gear.
I know. I love it. Every time I log on and I see you put that helmet up there, it makes me feel special.
That's it. You are.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see if you get a special football team. He had a special offense last year, and Matt Corral was one of the big reasons why. 29 touchdown passes in a short season. Mighty impressive there. 71% completion percentage. And he's coming back and maybe just needs to make a few less mistakes looking downfield.
Yeah, no, that, like you just said right there, that was the only real knock that people had on him last season. He threw, what's the number? I think he threw 11 of his 13 interceptions in the Arkansas and LSU games alone. You take out two of those two games right there, and he's probably in the Heisman talk for a while. Obviously didn't put up as many touchdowns and things like that as guys like Mac Jones, but he had a really, really phenomenal season. Ole Miss's offense spoke for itself. It was about as electric as anybody else's in the country. We put up the best single season of offense in SEC history. It's kind of crazy because we really only did it with a handful of guys. Sadly, Elijah Moore was the main guy on that team. He would have been, we talked about him before. He was on pace for one of, if not the best season in college football history for a receiver. Ended up not playing the rest of the season, opted out. But yeah, there's a lot of, like we talked about a minute ago, there's a lot of moving pieces on this team. We're kind of right at the end of the Matt Luke era where, some of these older guys on this team came in under him. Some of these younger guys are the beginning of the Kiffin era. And so, this will be kind of the first year where we've got a big group of guys that are Lane Kiffins. So we're excited for this. This is going to be an exciting spring.
Matt Corral in place again. John Rice Plumlee, a guy that at one point would battle it out with Corral for the starting job, and it was kind of like this 50-50 call a couple of years ago. Now it's gotten to a point where he can be used elsewhere in the offense.
Yeah, no, like you said, it's kind of crazy because 2 years ago we had a quarterback contest on our hands, and the wildest thing was that they could not have been more different in their skill sets. Matt Corral is a gunslinger. He's a good runner, but he's not nearly as good a runner as Plumlee. And we saw that 2 years ago. Plumlee played. He played the majority of the season. Ran for over 1,000 yards. Absolutely torched teams like LSU and Bama. And then once Jeff Lebby came to Oxford, he ushered in more of a passing offense, which just doesn't fit Plumlee's skill set nearly as well as Corral's. Like we talked about, Corral had a great year. He fit very well with Jeff Lebby's offense. We're ecstatic that we were able to keep UCF away for at least one more year and able to hold on to Jeff Lebby. But yeah, we talked about it, and everybody's excited to see Plumlee because he's expected to kind of turn into a utility weapon. We've seen him, he made some throws this year. He carried the ball a bunch. He also caught some passes. He caught a big one in the bowl game. Right now he's playing center field for the baseball team. So, the guy he can do it all. He had a 420-foot home run the other night. He can do it all really just wherever they need him. That's what he's going to do. And like I said, we expect to see him more as a utility weapon than, strictly a quarterback next year.
So they must seem really good in a comfortable place with the rest of the quarterback room if they can say, okay, Rice Plumlee, we can move you to slot receiver, let you work there. How does the quarterback battle look in the backup role?
Yeah, so Grant Tisdale was a guy who came in a couple of years ago, big four-star prospect out of Allen, Texas. He was here for a couple of years, ended up entering the transfer portal last year. He was expected to probably be the backup coming into this year had he had not transferred. But as it stands right now, you're either looking at Kincaid Dent, which he's a sophomore from Jackson, Mississippi, a big, tall pocket passer. you're either looking at him or you're looking at Luke Altmaier, who's the 4-star quarterback that we pulled out of Starkville, Mississippi this year. He's the second best prospect in this class, one of the top guys who really helped get the ball rolling and helped flip a lot of these guys that the Rebels ended up signing in this 2020 class. And so, those are the two guys that you're probably looking at realistically. I would imagine that Luke Altmaier is probably going to have the edge. I think he's just a more talented quarterback, but Kincaid Dent definitely has, more experience on him. He's already been in Jeff Levy's offense for a year, worked with some of these weapons and has gotten a little bit more adjusted to the college game. So really it's hard to tell as of now, but I think talent wise, Altmaier is probably going to edge him out.
Altmaier, top 200 prospect in his class, according to the 247 Sports Composite, 13th rated pro style quarterback. Let's go right to the receivers then, since we're on the topic. And Elijah Moore, I don't know that he got the acclaim that he deserved around college football. Those Alabama receivers led by Devontae Smith, of course, were ridiculous. And Elijah Moore was ridiculous. And he just takes so much offense with him. Rice Plumlee, though, turned into a key component there in the bowl win. He made some really good catches and turned out to be a guy that was key in ensuring that victory. So set us up at wideout.
Yeah. So, like we talked about a minute ago, Elijah Moore caught almost every single pass that was thrown this year for Ole Miss. Kenny Yeboah caught the majority after that. And after those two guys, there's a lot of guys with just, single digit catches, maybe 15 tops. And so, it's going to be challenging this year. It's going to be that's one of the things that Kiffin and everybody's alluded to, that is going to be the biggest challenge this year is finding out who's going to be that it factor again, who's going to be that guy. Because, all dating back last year, Lane Kiffin said, look, we want the ball in the hands of our best players. We don't mind that, that we're just, that's how we're going to run our offense. Our most talented guys will get the ball. And so, as we go into this year, we're going to have to figure out who that guy is. We've got Jonathan Mingo and Dontario Drummond. Those are both guys that have been around for a couple years. Like I said, they haven't, contributed a ton, but they've both had their moments. Obviously, when you got a guy like Elijah Moore who is open basically every time the ball is snapped, there's no real reason to try and force it to a Mingo or a Drummond. You're just going to hit the open guy. And so the lack of production is not because of a lack of talent. It's just they weren't needed. So you got those two guys. You've also got Braylon Sanders. He's been around for a couple years. He's made some really good plays for the Rebels, and he's been really big. He's fought some injuries back and forth. He's had a hamstring that's bothering him for multiple years now. But he's an uber talented guy that the Rebels have leaned on before. And then another one, Quay Davis. That's a guy who's a JUCO transfer. One of the 3 JUCO guys that we signed in this class, and he's a bit more of a big bodied receiver that the Rebels are expected to kind of use on the outside. So looking at those 3 guys right there, Braylon Sanders is the only real slot guy in that group. He's also played on the edge before, but looking into the slot to kind of fill Elijah Moore's spot. We're excited. We got a guy named Ja'Cour Pearson, excuse me. Another transfer guy, has been an all-conference USA player before. He's kind of the same prototypical, 5'8", 180, speedster, gets open, has great hands. He's that type of receiver like Elijah Moore. And so, we're kind of excited about that, because if we've got basically, another Elijah Moore who's already played college ball, that would be great. We'd love to have a guy that we could just roll right into this system. Wouldn't have to get him up to speed really. We just get him the ball. So I think this year it's going to be a little bit more of an effort by committee than it was last year. Definitely more than it was last year. But going forward, I think we're in good hands. We've just got to get it's just going to take a minute, I think, to kind of get some of these guys back up to speed and to where they're expecting the ball every play, and to where they're we feel comfortable giving them the ball, more than we have the last couple of years.
Yeah, just to run down the numbers on the 3 experienced guys that you mentioned, Mingo, Drummond, and Sanders. Mingo caught 27, 3 touchdowns. Drummond, 25, 7 touchdowns. And Sanders, 15 catches for 4 touchdowns. And 25 yards per catch for Braylon Sanders. So he made up some chunk yardage plays in that regard. At running back, same story in regards to, and Jake, I talk to guys covering college football all across the board every day, and typically we're talking about so many players moving on, but man, you got weapons all over the place coming back, so that's a good thing. Jerrion Ealy, one of the best in the SEC, scored 9 touchdowns on the ground and 1 through the air with 15 catches and 745 yards. So you got your main weapon out of the backfield coming back too.
Yeah. Jerrion Ealy, a couple years ago, he was a 5-star prospect. He's one of the best prospects that's ever signed with Ole Miss, and he came to campus and he immediately started proving why. He came in, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, he was a freshman All-American or at least a freshman All-SEC. Like I said, came in, he took a lot of carries, also returned some kicks and things like that. He kind of, in the same kind of respect as Plumlee, he's not a one-trick pony. They've got a lot of different ways that they can get him the ball, that they feel like he can be effective with the ball. He showed it over the last couple of years. He's a fast guy. He's shifty. He's not the big guy that you expect to see running through the tackles, but when he does run through the tackles, he's shifty. He's got good balance, and he's able to find those holes, which is something that's huge. Behind him, you've got Snoop Conner and Henry Parrish. Snoop Conner's a guy who's kind of split carries with Ealy the last couple of years, and then Henry Parrish was a guy who came in as a freshman last year. Both of them have run the ball very, very well when their number was called. Last year, Jerrion Ealy and Snoop Conner both ran for over 100 against Alabama, which is, I believe, if I remember the stat correctly, that's the only time that's ever happened in the Saban era at Alabama. And so, the point of that being that these guys know how to run the ball. They know how to run it. They know how to run it well. And we're kind of spoiled at the running back position because Ealy's that top guy, but we've also got 2 really, really good running backs behind him, that can kind of take that load off. And there's really not too much of a drop off in talent and production when you put a Snoop Conner or a Henry Parrish out there.
And the point of that being, I think also in addition to running 2 running backs out there with 100+ yards against an Alabama team with a Nick Saban defense, is that everybody thinks Lane Kiffin pass.
Right.
But he's more balanced than that. He understands offensive football, that you need to have the ground threat. And with 3 excellent running backs coming back, that's a good sign for the Rebels. Got Jake Evans on the line from the Rebel Walk. I got to join him and the rest of the staff over there covering Ole Miss athletics. They're definitely a good bunch over there and have joined us for a long, long time. Offensive line, good group there. You only lose 1. You got 4 coming back. And, of course, they're the guys that make all this possible.
Right. Yeah. So Royce Newman's the only guy that the Rebels are going to be losing from this class, or from last year's starting line. So you got Nick Broker returning. He's been a stud for the Rebs the last 2 years. They pulled him out of Big Ten country a couple of years ago. You got that would be Nick Broker at left tackle. Caleb Warren at left guard. He played in 10 games last year for the Rebs. Ben Brown at center. He's been a stud. He's been the kind of the key piece on that offensive line for a couple of years now. And then you got Jeremy James at right guard, another guy who played a lot of football last year. Where it gets a little bit dicey is looking at that right tackle position, though, because that was where Royce Newman was. You've got a bunch of different options in young guys. You've got an Eli Acker, Cedric Melton, Tobias Braun. You've got those 3 are all, they were pretty highly rated guys coming out of high school that are expected to be able to play some good football, at some point. But the interesting thing about this is that there's a lot of talk that Jeremy James might be shifted out to right tackle, leaving that hole at the right guard spot. So there's a lot of young depth with interior offensive linemen. So the thought is that they might shift Jeremy James out to right tackle and kind of just, use the wealth that they have with interior linemen and just try and plug that spot there. Obviously, we're not spring practice yet. We haven't seen the spring game yet. We don't know what they're thinking, or how that's going to shake out. But yeah, there's bringing back 80% of your offensive line and having some good guys to fill that one empty spot. We feel good about where we're at. We've had times where our offensive line has been, an issue back and forth, where we've had injuries, where we've had, certain spots that we just couldn't fill. And we feel pretty confident going into this year. Like I said, we've got 4 guys who played a lot of football. And then the only hole we're plugging is with guys that, are as talented as anybody else on this roster.
Talking Ole Miss football as we move on to the defense. We got Jake Evans on the line from the Rebel Walk. Please join him and the rest of the staff on over there, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whatever you like. Talking Ole Miss Rebels. Defensive front, couple JUCOs coming in to help the cause, but pretty much everybody coming back there as well.
Yeah, so like you said, a couple of JUCOs, Isaiah Aiton and Jamon Gordon. Those are two guys that Rebel fans need to look out for this year. Those are both guys that are expected to play right now. They obviously playing in JUCO. They've played some college football before. They're as talented as they come, and they're ready to play SEC ball. Other than that, you've got Tarekius Tisdale, who's coming back. He's been here forever. I mean, I guess he's a senior now. Last year he was a senior, so this is his COVID senior year. That dude's a stud. He's a stud. He's 6'5", 300 pounds. He can move. He hits like a brick wall. That's a great guy that the Rebs are bringing back. That makes you feel really good because even with Jamon Gordon and Isaiah Aiton being talented guys, you still like to have a key piece that's been there, and Tisdale is kind of that anchor to that team. At nose tackle, you're looking at KD Hill. That's a guy who's played before, been around. He's a big old boy. He's a hole plugger right there in the middle of that offensive line. He's got the SEC size. He's got the SEC ability, and that's a guy that the Rebs are going to lean on big time this year. Other than that, looking at the defensive line, it's there's a lot of what ifs and a lot of question marks. A lot of Rebel fans have forgotten about him, but Damon Clowney, that was a guy that was signed in last year's class, cousin of Jadeveon Clowney, still hasn't suited up for the Rebs yet. That's a defensive lineman who's got all the talent in the world. He's a freak athlete like his cousin, and that's a guy that a lot of people have forgotten about. Like I said, other than that, you've got Tywan Malone, who the Rebels just signed out of New Jersey. He was a top 60 player in this class. He tore his ACL in his senior season of football last year, so he's recovering from that right now. That's kind of a question mark, like I said, because we're just not sure about the timetable of that recovery yet. We're not sure how much of spring, summer that he's going to be able to do. We're not sure, if they're going to be able to get him up to speed without him being able to practice. And so, that's a big question mark right there. But that's a guy that if he's healthy, I would expect to see him play right off the bat. He's got the size, he's got the speed. He's probably the most talented defensive lineman on this line at the moment. But whether or not we get to see him this year, like I said, it's kind of still up in the air. Other than that, you've got the Rebels are bringing back all their linebackers. We're ecstatic about that. We've got 4 guys that have played a lot of college football, have played a lot of good college football. We've got Momo Sonogo. People forget 3 years ago, Momo Sonogo had 115 tackles in the SEC. The guy can play football. He's kind of the captain and I would say the main voice on that defense. Other than that, you've got Jaquez Jones, who's another guy who's been around for a long time, another vocal leader, another good anchor piece to that team. And then you got Lakia Henry and Sam Williams. Those are both guys that came in as JUCO guys a couple of years ago. Same story. Both guys have played a lot of good football for the Rebels. The linebackers, they've taken a good bit of criticism over the last couple of years just because, they're quarterbacks of the defense. And it's no secret that Ole Miss's defense has been pretty poor. And so those guys have taken, a lot of heat over the last couple of years. But when you really look at it, those guys are probably playing the best football on the defense. And so we're excited about that, bringing all those guys back. And then the craziest thing about this year that I mentioned to you earlier, the Rebels have 33 defensive backs on the roster. And realistically, at least 20 of them have a chance to play this year. At least 20 of them could be competing for a starting spot this year. It really is wild. You've got guys like Otis Reese, Keedron Smith, AJ Finley, Jalen Jones that have all played before that are, good established playmakers in that secondary. You've got guys like Mark Britt, who's a high recruit who came out last year, switched from receiver over to DB. DeAndre Prince, Miles Battle. Then you got freshmen that are coming in. You've got Dink Jackson, a 4-star. Elijah Sabatini, a very high 3-star. MJ Daniels, 4-star. Kendrick Breedlove, guy out of Nashville who's a high 3-star. And then Markevius Brown, who came from IMG, who's another 4-star. I mean, the names go on and on and on. I could give you DBs all day long, Mark, till the cows come home. But it really is crazy because there's a lot of talent in this secondary, and that's really not something the Rebels have had for a long time.
I'm just trying to figure out what the roster composition for the team is. If you got 33 defensive backs, you got to have a lot of – everybody's got offensive linemen. You got to have about 12 or 14 of those guys. That pretty much, it might be a little bit sparse elsewhere, but 33 DBs. And like you say, AJ Finley, just looking at the stat sheet, had the best year with 3 picks and 7 passes defensed. You mentioned Keydron Smith had 64 tackles. He was second on the team in tackles, had a pick and a tackle for loss as well. Some really good stuff there. And obviously it's Jaquez Jones who led the team with 75 tackles and 2.5 tackles for loss. So I got to throw it out there for you, Jake. Everybody thinks Ole Miss football now that Lane Kiffin's on campus, and think, okay, and everybody was focused on that, both the Florida and the Alabama games early on in the season, and then caught up with the Rebels late in the season with a big win against Indiana, and think, even though the defense played really well in the bowl game, before that, it's okay, it's all offense, it's all passing, it's no defense. Do we expect a little bit better balance and more contribution from the defensive side this year?
Well, yes. Short answer, I would say yes. And man, I sure hope so. I hope I'm right there because, like we've talked about before, it's been tough to watch the Rebels play defense the last couple of years. We've had to beat teams just by outscoring them. A lot of these games, we can't stop anybody. Alabama, I'm pretty sure if I remember right, I think Alabama's, I don't remember what the total was. Say they had 500 yards. They were only capable of getting 508 yards that game, something like that. I mean, they literally moved the ball and were almost not stopped the entire day. They completed almost every chance that they had. And really that's kind of been a microcosm for our defense the last couple of years. They can't stop anything. They can't stop a nosebleed. And so, we're excited about this. Like we, Lane Kiffin talked about it going into this recruiting class. He said, look, it's no secret what we need. Look at the tape. You know what we need. Everybody knows what we need. It's defense. He signed more defensive guys in this class than offense, which, really shows that he's serious about it because everybody knows Lane Kiffin's an offensive guy. And looking at it right here, like we talked about, there's a lot of good returning talent. I would be shocked if we saw good returning talent go the wrong direction this year. That just wouldn't make any sense to me. And so, I'm inclined to believe that we're going to see a good step up from last year. Otis Reese is a guy that, he was a very, very highly rated guy, signed with Georgia, played safety. He, for some reason, was not – the NCAA held him hostage for, I think, 7 games last year. Everybody else was freed for their transfer waiver. And Otis Reese, if I remember correctly, didn't play until I think the last 3 games of the season. He was a guy who came in and played great football. The defense looked better from the moment that he stepped on the field. And, sadly, like I said, we were only able to get him for a handful of games instead of the full slate. But that's a guy who's coming back. Like we talked about on the D-line, Tariqius Tisdale's been there forever. Dude can play. We're returning 4 linebackers. We've got more DBs than anyone in the country. I mean, there's a lot of talent that goes around on this team here. And I think we're excited for it because, like I said, there's a lot of good experience. And I think there's a lot more to be optimistic about than there has been in the last couple of years.
Jake Evans talking Ole Miss football with us on a regular basis. You can join Jake and the rest of the crew there at the rebelwalk.com. You see it down there on the banner, the rebelwalk.com. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You got to check out what we do each and every day, covering the game we all love, discussion, debate, and analysis. That's our aim. That's our goal. That's our mission. So, Jake, I think you bring up a great point because offensive guys in the past have pretty much had a reputation, and I'll take Mike Leach, for example, that he almost doesn't care, and I'm overstating this, almost doesn't care about the win or the loss. He wants to throw for 500 yards, and if his defense is giving up 45, 50 points, big deal. I'm here for the offense, and this is what we're going to be. I might be exaggerating that to an extreme, but I think it speaks to Lane Kiffin wanting to build a legitimate team. I just don't want to be a gimmick gadget coach that I'm going to score 60 points and you're going to be impressed with my offense. No, I'm here to win. We're playing football and there's both sides of the ball. And just looking at this recruiting class, you see that there's dedication to defense because most of the guys at the top of the board, Markevius Brown, Dink Jackson, as you mentioned, Tysheem Johnson, one of the best safeties in the country, defense.
Yeah. And like you said right there, Lane Kiffin, for his whole, I think that's one of the common misconceptions about him is that he is strictly an offensive guy. Obviously, he spent the majority of his career either as an offensive-minded head coach or as an offensive coordinator, offensive coach in some respect like that. That's just what he's done for his whole career. That doesn't mean that he can't coach defense. That just means that he's a heck of a lot better and he's got a heck of a lot more experience on the offensive side. Obviously, it showed this year. You know, we like I said, Ole Miss put up the best single season of SEC offense in history, but we also put up at the same time, I mean, narrowly, I think it was by less than half a yard, almost the worst. We had the second worst defense in SEC history. At the same time, we had the best offense in SEC history. And so, you know, the polar opposites were there. And I really think that that's something that really embarrassed him this year, because there was a lot more talent on this team than you know, we were able to produce. I think we all expected this defense to be better. And you know, when it was as bad as it was, I really think that was kind of embarrassing to him, because, you know, it's all fun and games to throw for 500 yards, like you said, and to, you know, score 45 points. But if you give up 48, that 45 doesn't matter. And that's kind of been the case for the Rebels the last few years, is that we might score 45, but like I said, we'll give up 48, we'll give up 52. You know, we just can't put together a whole game. And so, you know, I think that that's something that, you know, it's seeing all these guys in this recruiting class, seeing, you know, a focus on defense, seeing him, you know, speaking about it more, not just blowing whistles and you know, blowing smoke. He's really, really committed to it. I think it shows that Lane Kiffin's, he's for real this time. This isn't the young hot shot who showed up at Tennessee. This wasn't the guy that got left on the tarmac. This is a guy he's been around the block. He's coached all over the place at the highest levels, you know, way down low in college football too. I think he's kind of really found who he is as a coach. I think he's obviously an offensive genius in my mind. That's maybe my bias speaking here, but I think he's an offensive genius if there's any right now. And you know, I think that the fact that he's focusing on the defense and he's really, really putting an emphasis on it shows that he's really, really come full circle as a coach, and that, you know, I think there's a good, bright future for him here in Oxford.
Which, ironically, his father is one of the great defensive coordinators in the history of the NFL.
Right. And that's the part that just makes no sense about it, to be honest.
And then the other thing in this that's interesting about Lane Kiffin and what he's trying to build at Ole Miss is you also have to consider, if you're playing, especially in that conference, but anywhere in the Power Five, but especially in that conference, the defense is tougher to build than the offense. If you get the quarterback and get a couple playmakers, and then basically you scheme it up and he's smart enough to not expose the offensive line. If the offensive line's not quite good enough to compete in that league, but you can get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, then you can start to do some things on offense. Defense, you need like layers of players. You can't have like 8 good players and 4 bad players on an SEC defense, because the 4 bad players are going to get exposed. Absolutely. So you might be closer than the stats would indicate and the scores would indicate at Ole Miss defensively, where you're throwing out 8, 9 really good players, but you're just getting picked apart in some key areas, and you might be closer defensively than people think.
Yeah, well, and like you said right there, you know, with the offense, I mean, if you really want to boil it down, it was Matt Corral and it was Elijah Moore. You got some help from Jerry Neely. He helps obviously pull some linebackers down, you know, with play action and things like that. But when you really look at it, the overwhelming majority of Ole Miss's offense this year was quick snap, 2 steps back. Nobody can get to him that quick, thankfully. 2 steps back and it's out. It's either a quick slant, it's a seam, it's something quick. And that's what his offense is all about. It's about being quick, getting the ball to the right people, and you know, limiting the risk that you take, and you know, running your quarterback around and things like that. Kiffin knows that you know, that's the better way to play offense. It's better for your, you know, the health of your skill players to be quick. And it also helps you, you know, like you said, expose those 2 or 3 or 4 guys on the defense that aren't up to speed, that aren't as fast, that can't cover, you know, that can't tackle. And you know, when you flip it around and you look at our defense, we've put together, you know, 7 or 8 really good guys on the defense the last couple of years, but we've also had 3 or 4 that have really, really hurt us. And you know, that's where we are in college football. Coaches, quarterbacks, coordinators, they're all smart enough to go, that's my guy. I'm picking on that guy today. And when he comes on the field and he's covering, you know, Jake Evans, I'm going his way. And so, you know, that's one of the things that, bringing it all back here, you know, we're excited about this because I think that there's going to be less weak links on this offense, or on the defense. And you know, I think that Kiffin is such an offensive-minded guy, and he thinks about how to expose defenses like that, and he's so good at it that I think it also works in reverse, and he can turn around and go, okay, I'm trying to think about how am I going to expose Nick Saban's defense. let me flip it around. How could you expose my defense? What do I need to do to strengthen this? Because, the way that offense in college football is moving, it's moving in the direction of a Lane Kiffin type of offense and a Jeff Lebby offense. It's fast. It's quick. You're Ole Miss is scoring, the last couple of years, Ole Miss has been scoring 4 plays, 75 yards, 48 seconds. It's things like that. And so, you hurt yourself in some respects because you put your defense out there for the majority of the game. That's what's been our problem for the last couple of years is we've got the defense out there for 40 minutes a game at least. And it's nice that your offense is scoring and it's moving fast and that it's, just churning on all cylinders. But at the same time, you got to take a look and go, okay, how do we help this defense? How do we shore this defense up? And if they are going to be on the field for 40 minutes a game, how can we make sure that, they're playing good football and that they're not just getting run up and down the field left and right?
Well, they're not necessarily football players, but they can decide a whole lot, and we tend to ignore them and forget about them at times. But it could be the difference between 6-6 and 8-4. How does the field goal kicking look? You got Luke Logan, who went 6 for 10 last year.
Yeah, it's been a tough go for Luke Logan the last couple of years. He had a great sophomore year. What was really, we were excited about him. We felt good. Ole Miss has had a history of pretty good kickers while I've been alive. And sadly, the last couple of years, it just wasn't doing. We've got a couple of guys. We got a couple of young guys. Lan Gebhardt's a guy who's a sophomore from Jackson, Mississippi. Really solid leg, really strong leg. Has been practicing with the team for the last year. You got another guy named Caden Costa who's coming out of Louisiana, also a stud kicker. Those are the 2 guys that you're looking at right there. As it stands right now, I really couldn't tell you, who's got the edge or what would give one of them the edge. I guess just kicking the ball long and straight would be the way to do it. But, we're really, really, really crossing our fingers because, like we said, it's been a tough go for Luke Logan the last couple of years. And it got to the point last year where Lane Kiffin just said, I'm not kicking field goals. If we're inside maybe the 30-yard line, 35-yard line, we're just going to go for it because the numbers say that he's probably going to miss, and I got a better chance of completing a 7-yard slant to Elijah Moore than Luke Logan hitting a 52-yarder. So, when you look at it, we don't know who it's going to be yet, but we hope it's going to be a better year because there definitely were some times this year where you're sitting there banging your head against the wall going, we need 3. That's it. We don't need to score. We just need 3 points. Why can't we get 3 points?
Absolutely. And Lane Kiffin, of course, the last guy that wants to see the punter on the field, but Mac Brown was pretty good for you, 46.6 yards per punt. So unless he's moved on, is he going to be back, do you know, for this year?
That's a good question, actually. I cannot remember. He was a senior last year, and so I don't know if he's planning on coming back and using his COVID year or not. But I really don't know that, to be honest. He's been a great punter for us for the last couple of years. He's a big dude. He's had a few personal fouls in his time. He's chippy. He's actually a buddy of mine. And at one point, I don't remember what game it was. He got a personal foul, went down the field. Maybe it was a late hit or something. And we asked him, we were like, man, what are you doing? You're a punter. Why you run? Let the rest of them tackle him. That's what they're out there for. And he was like, I get bored back there. He's like, I'm big enough to hit him. I just get bored. I'm pretty fast. So I figure, why not? Let's just run down the field, see what I can do. And, he's laid the wood a couple of times, honestly. But yeah, he's a great athlete. He's got a great leg. He's been really good for us the last couple of years. Obviously, like you said, you never want to see your punter. But if you do have to see him, at least you're getting 45, 50, 55 yards out of him every time.
I've always said, Jake, the best position in professional sports is punter on an NFL team. You make $2-3 million, maybe more than that per year. The field goal kicker has all the pressure. The field goal kicker's the guy that everybody hates because he missed the 52-yarder at the gun in the NFL, and you do that like 3 times and you're out of a job. But if you're a punter, if you can hit for 45 yards per punt, hey, nobody really notices.
Yeah. I'm a Titans fan, and Brett Kern has been one of the best punters in the NFL the last handful of years. There have been games that the Titans have won in the last 4 or 5 years where it was Brett Kern. Brett Kern was the reason the Titans won. He didn't complete a pass. He didn't score a touchdown. He didn't make a tackle. He didn't do anything like that. But he kicked the ball so well and he flipped the field so well that he was as valuable as anybody out there. And like you said, when it comes down to it, there's not a whole lot of pressure on him unless you shank one, 6 yards the other way or do one of those. But for the most part, these guys are, I mean, Mac Brown's pretty as automatic as they come in college football, I think.
Good stuff from Jake Evans. Check him out and the rest of the staff there at the Rebel Walk. And, of course, lock it in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Jake, we appreciate you stopping by. And, hey, we're all set for Ole Miss spring practice. We just need to find out exactly when it's starting, but we're all set for the Rebels to get on the field.
Yep. Whenever it starts, we'll be there. We'll be ready to roll, and hopefully we'll shoot for 9 or 10 wins this year.